older brothers and sisters will have a different way of working with their younger siblings than siblings who are only just a little bit older. And that's an interesting thing which Eve Gregory has looked at. So it could be that it's guided participation. Yeah? So the 4-year-old and the 2.5-year-old, very much they're both participating, both, and the older one, the 4-year-old, is guiding the younger one. But sometimes that I see it happening in front of my eyes, that turns into this sort of collaborative learning when they're helping each other. Yes. And that's an interesting one that happens. You know, the collaboration comes together. So, for example, the older one will write the younger one's name on a drawing because the younger one can't manage it. Or the younger one will write the first letter of his name and the older one will complete it for him. Yeah? Very collaborative. So it depends on this relationship that brothers and sisters have with each other. But they are significant, and it is significant as part of literacy learning. Quite often, the older ones in a family will actually role play being the teacher. I can remember as a child lining up my soft toys and my brother and being the teacher and telling them what to do. Yeah? And the fact that my brother was a living, breathing human being didn't really matter. The teddy bears and the dolls were also, part of my audience as the teacher. But that role modelling, that playing, being teacher, happens a lot in families. Yeah? Just as much as playing at being mother and father happens naturally with children. Children do play being teacher. A task taught, and I taught in inverted commas because it learnt, perhaps, through play also promotes thinking and learning in the older child. So the older child benefits from this as well. Yeah? So it's two-way. It's not just the older ones teaching the younger ones. It's actually the younger ones will have an effect on the older ones as well. Right? And what they're doing, and I'll look at this a bit more in a minute, they're looking at rules. Because literacy is all about rules. Some of that struggle that we have with writing with our non-dominant hand is we know the rules, but we still struggle. Yeah? There are lots of rules with writing, reading, speaking, listening, that we have to learn. And sometimes we say these rules very formally, like grammar. Yeah? And where the noun and the verb happens within a sentence. We talk about question marks and full stops and commas and yes, quite formal rules of writing and reading. But other rules are informal. Spaces that we take in conversation. Again, learning Mandarin Chinese has been interesting because when I first started listening to Mandarin speakers, it sounded like one continuous long word. And now, of course, I can pick out individual words and sounds, and I can hear the gaps between them. Yeah? And that's something that children learn quite quickly, that even when we're speaking, the sound is continuous, but when we're reading, there are gaps, and there are individual words. So these rules are important. Rules children pick up and learn through experience. And very, very young children, a few weeks old, will begin to understand rules. A baby will learn how to cry to get their mother to respond to them. And a 6-week-old baby will cry in different ways according to what the matter is. Whether they want feeding, whether they want their diaper changed, whether they want being picked up and soothed. Yes? So that child is learning the rules of communication, even at 6 weeks old. Yes? Is he catching up with the rules? And of course, the rules become more sophisticated as you become literate. as you speak, listen, and then eventually learn to read and write. Whole set of rules. But children are programmed to learn rules. That's what we do. We take lots of information into our brains through our eyes and our ears and our fingers, through our taste and smell, and our brain organises it and sorts out rules. Yes? This is called red. That's a circle. Right? These are women. Those are men. My mother is a woman. Yeah? My father is a man. Yeah? And so forth. Rules in everyday life. And you can see children using these rules if you watch them playing. In an unstructured, free play situation, the children will be stating rules. You give a set of marbles or bricks to construction bricks to children, and they will make up rules. No, don't put that there. No, this one's supposed to go there. No, the big marble is more important than the little one, and so on. They're making up their own rules. Theory. Vygotsky argued that cognitive development, that is development of thinking and understanding, has to involve social activity. This is socio-constructivism, that we learn to think through interactions with others. That if we're isolated, we wouldn't learn to think. And this social activity, there are lots and lots of rules. The rule at the moment is, I'm talking, and as I'm the presenter, you've got to listen. That's a social rule, isn't it? Yeah. And every now and then I say, right, over to you, you do some talking. Yeah. And I'm giving you a rule that now, in the next few minutes, you can do that instead of me doing it. So we understand rules and then we voluntarily accept them. Yeah? Even if those rules we don't realise are rules. So literacy requires understanding of a complex set of rules that we can do with our eyes closed. Yes? And you did with your eyes closed. There's always a problem, isn't there? Reluctant readers and writers, those children who don't want to do it. I fell into this category before I was 7. I didn't want to do this. I thought it was too hard, too complex. I didn't have a very kind teacher, and I think that didn't help my confidence. You're a big girl now, you should be able to. That sort of comment. So there are always going to be children, for some reason or other, are reluctant to learn these rules and to learn the process and the skills that we know they need to learn. Key to this, to dealing with this situation, is finding what motivates those children. What is it which will get them interested? Yeah? What is it that will make that learning meaningful? If you learn to read, you will be able to play this computer game. Yeah? You'll be able to go shopping with a shopping list. Yeah? You will be able to learn how a car engine works if you can read it. Now, quite often, literacy in school turns into this sort of formal teaching of particular rules. And at the moment in the UK, there's a huge educational debate going on about something called synthetic phonics. And our teachers are required, in teacher training, and then when they're working with young children, are required to use phonics to teach children how to read. Right? So consonant blends, what vowels sound like, and so on. This is leading to really stilted teaching, formal teaching, because it's just code breaking. It's learning one particular aspect, one rule, if you like, about reading. It's a very helpful thing to know about phonics. And as adults, we can see a new word and try and work out how it's pronounced because we understand about phonics. But it's not the only thing. Yeah? And that's the problem with formal teaching of literacy. Quite often we take one rule and try and teach that rule. Yes? If you see PH, it makes a F sound in English. Yeah? If you see a TH, it makes a Th sound. Yes? And we give that as a rule. Yeah? But if you decontextualise that away from how language really is, the home space, the third space, yeah, then it becomes formalised. The children's motivation goes down, their interest drops, and you've lost it. Yes? So these rules need to be taught in and amongst a very holistic way of doing literacy. And hopefully the emphasis on phonics will disappear. These fashions come and go in education. Will disappear, and we will go back to a more sort of holistic way of teaching reading in the UK. Removing children from a formal setting of sitting at a desk is really, really useful for literacy. Yeah. There is a place for copying text, yeah, and practicing handwriting so that other people can understand what you've read. But I look at the prescription my doctor writes and I think, I can't read your handwriting. And this is perhaps one of the most highly educated professionals that I come across in my life. And their handwriting is dreadful. You don't have to have good handwriting. So copying text, sitting at a desk, is part of literacy, but it's a tiny, weeny little bit. It's not important. It's another part of it. Yes. Unfortunately, it just seems that this is what parents see. Yeah? That if my child can write clearly with a good handwriting, they are well educated. Yes. Here's a suggestion. You say to such a parent, well, my doctor, I can't read my doctor's writing. Who? No, I'm afraid not. But I have some close friends who are. So providing experiences and activities that actually stimulate speaking, listening, reading and writing, yeah, whatever that activity is far more important than sitting at a desk copying handwriting. Yeah? That way you've got the children interested, engaged, they're highly motivated to learn, to do it, to practice it and to get better. Yeah? And the sitting down and producing that wonderful copy right at the end might not happen for hours, might not happen for days, it might not happen for weeks. It will happen though. But it's actually that prior process where they're trying things out, practicing things. And here's another analogy with being an adult. When I write something, whether it's for a chapter for a book or an article for a journal, or writing a PowerPoint like this, I go through a number of drafts. Yeah? I start off with a few notes, yeah, scribbles, maybe a mind map, and then it gets down to a list, and then I start putting sentences in, yes, and I move things